From rare, one-of-a-kind cars used in movies to strange random things used by celebrities, here are 16 most expensive memorabilia ever sold. Number 16. Monica Lewinsky's lingerie. Now here's a piece of memorabilia Bill Clinton definitely got his hands on. Some lingerie can get pretty expensive as it is, but if it was involved with a presidential affair, it could be considered a piece of history and sold for a large amount of dough. As part of a 33-piece collection from the scandal that was used as evidence for the affair, it sold for about $12,000. Monica sold it herself and said that she expected to get more like $50,000 for the collection. This black nightgown we see here was among some of the many items, but it also included letters exchanged between the two. Number 15. Britney Spears chewed gum. In 2004, 22-year-old Britney Spears spit out a chewed piece of gum, which was then scavenged by an entrepreneur who then would sell it for about $14,000. That's basically the most expensive piece of chewed bubblegum ever sold. At the peak of Britney's pop career, there were a bunch of auctions like this from people who just seemed to follow Britney Spears everywhere she went and would even check garbage cans for anything with her DNA on it. Do they plan on cloning Britney or something? Some people are just downright creepy and need to leave Britney alone. Number 14. John Lennon's tooth. Beatles memorabilia is some of the most sought after, but it does get a little bit weird with this one. The musician had a molar extracted during his later years. John Lennon handed this tooth over to his housekeeper sometime in the 1960s and suggested her to keep it as a souvenir. This was sold at the Omega Auctions House in the UK. Expecting to get only $16,000 for it, it actually exceeded expectations by nearly twice that, selling at $31,000. Maybe someone will just keep it and decide to clone him too, or what's up? Number 13. Wilson. The movie Castaway, where Tom Hanks gets trapped on a deserted island and essentially loses his mind, is where this famous prop comes from. How much would you pay for possibly the most famous volleyball in history? This isn't your ordinary volleyball by any means, oh no. It was also Tom Hanks' best friend during the film, and it managed to sell for a whopping $18,400 after the film came out. Wilson has made appearances and been the butt of many jokes on TV and other pop culture references. The person who bought it probably needed some friends too. Number 12. Superman's costume. Is it a bird or a plane? No, it's an overly expensive costume that sold for $115,000. This costume was featured in the Superman movie with Christopher Reeves, and it's also an iconic piece of American history. The cape and logo was included, unlike in the Batman costume. The person who bought this got both the cape and the logo with this. If it made it onto the screen, no matter what the object is, the price will always definitely be higher. Number 11. Elvis Presley's hair. Elvis was also known as the King of Rock and Roll and had some swinging hips that attracted millions of fans. And nowadays, pretty much anything with a personal connection to the King is worth an extremely large amount of money. And when we mean personal connection, we mean it was literally connected to Elvis. We're talking about that stylish pompadour. That's right, Elvis's personal barber kept some of his hair, which is almost like a holy relic to any Elvis collector. Elvis apparently has the most expensive hair out there among musicians, with a little black lock of hair selling for $115,000. Number 10. Luke Skywalker's lightsaber. This is basically the holy grail for all Star Wars fans. Being able to hold a real lightsaber that was held in the same hands as Mark Hamill would probably cause some nerds to never wash their hands again. This one here was used in Star Wars A New Hope in 1977 and The Empire Strikes Back in 1980. This device used a wooden pole where the blade was then covered with a special projection paint to add the effects afterwards, so the buyer isn't technically getting a deadly weapon. This one here was actually sold at an auction for $200,000. Number 9. Bronco Nagurski football card. Certainly, baseball cards are more sought after, but Americans enjoy football too, and there's some expensive memorabilia out there sold for this sport as well. Many of you probably aren't familiar with Bronco Nagurski. During his era, he was one of the biggest football players, measuring 6 foot 2 inches and weighing 235 pounds. He played left tackle, running back, and fullback for the Chicago Bears. The man is a legend and is even known for running into a wall at Wrigley Field and cracking it. He has the ability to run over opposing defenders and won a championship game against the Washington Redskins. This card you see here in the photo was sold for $240,000. It features him wearing his college jersey back in the day when he played for the NCAA Minnesota Gophers. Number 8. The DeLorean car Back to the Future. 6 DeLorean DMC cars, 1 non-working replica, were used in the making of the Back to the Future. A few are on display at both Universal Studios locations in Orlando and in Hollywood. After a few fix-ups, the third was sold for $541,000. These odd-looking cars were one of the first to have vertically rising doors. DeLorean stated that in 2017, they'll be selling 300 models that are expected to cost $100,000 a pop, but no news yet if they're complete with time travel capabilities. What would you do with a time machine, and what would you invest in with time traveling capabilities? Let us know in the comments section, and maybe we'll feature you in an upcoming video. Number 7. Dorothy's Red Ruby Slippers. Judy Garland wore these red shoes in the infamous Wizard of Oz, which is one of the most famous classical American movies ever produced. There are multiple pairs of these props. One, which is currently being held in the Smithsonian Museum of American History, which kind of gives you an idea what a big deal these shoes are. Another one sold for $666,000 in auction. The shoes were actually silver if you'd read the book, but the director decided red would show up better while she was walking through the yellow brick road. Would this prop still be as famous if the director decided to be more accurate with the book? Number 6. Muhammad Ali's boxing gloves. He could float like a butterfly and sting like a bee, but he can also sell his boxing gloves for a very high fee. An auction took place during Muhammad Ali's 70th birthday in Las Vegas, and you better believe there were some high-profile bidders. But keep in mind, these are no ordinary gloves. These were the ones worn by Muhammad during a fight in 1956. Number 5. Car from Spinout. As we've mentioned before, Elvis was like a god in a sense, and most things that he touched can sell for a high price. Even his dirty underwear have been known to sell for high prices. In 1965, Elvis appeared in a short film known as Spinout, which was about a lead singer for a traveling band who was also known to engage in some street racing from time to time. One of the things that most people remember about this movie was the car that he used to drive in the film. This car was known as the 1929 Duesenberg Model J, which was already rare enough as it is. And then you have Elvis driving it, and that thing's worth some real bucks. This type of car would have been like driving a Lambo back in the late 1920s, and reimagine the car alone is worth about $500,000. But it went on sale at an auction in 2011 and sold at $1.2 million. Number 4. John Lennon's Rolls Royce. Yes, we're all familiar with the Beatles, and we all know they made a fortune from their songs. This allowed them to buy a 1965 Rolls-Royce Phantom, but they certainly weren't going to use just any ordinary paint job. You better believe they made this thing look pretty psychedelic. The Rolls-Royce alone would be an honor to have in the first place, considering its age, but the simple fact that the Beatles drove around in it makes it quite priceless. Okay, so maybe there is a price. About $2.2 million. It was sold to a wealthy Canadian businessman in 1985, so that price would be even higher in today's money. Although it looks pretty crazy, we're not too sure if you'd actually want to drive around in this thing, considering just a minor scratch in the paint could actually devalue it quite dramatically. Number 3. Honus Wagner Baseball Card. Baseball cards are among a few things collectors strive to get their hands on the most, no matter the price. The Honus Wagner is one of the most famous and the most expensive baseball cards in existence. Baseball cards were once found in cigarette packs at this time. Wagner refused to allow his production of this card because he didn't want people to smoke. Once production ended, there were only 50 to 20 ever distributed to the public. In 2011, a Honus Wagner card sold at an auction for $2.8 million. The buyer was originally anonymous, but it was later revealed to be Ken Kendrick, who played for the Arizona D-backs. Number 2. Kurt Cobain Guitar. Nirvana's lead singer Kurt Cobain was certainly one of the biggest rock stars in the US during the 1990s and is the most well-known individual in the grunge scene. His life tragically ended under mysterious circumstances, and who knows what he could have accomplished if he stayed in the music industry. This guitar that we see here in the photo was used shortly by Kurt Cobain and used during a 1991 show. Cobain gave it as a gift to Mary Lou Lord during their short relationship, and then it sold at an auction for $29,000. This model is a 1953 Martin D18 guitar, and it looks like in the photo some of the wood is beginning to slightly age. Other items relating to Kurt have sold for much more, and some autographed ones have gone for over $100,000. Number 1. Babe Ruth's Jersey. Babe Ruth was a legendary player that so many people idolize, even to this day. Being able to come across one of his jerseys is something most people only ever dream of. In 2012, a jersey that was actually worn by the Big Bambino was sold for $4.4 million. When it comes to sports memorabilia, a lot of the most expensive items tend to be baseball related or just relating to Babe Ruth.